like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand.
I don't have a clever intro this time. Got nothing, honestly. Running on fumes here, people. Random clip time?
No, 6, no, 7, all in, 7, now 8, now 8 again, 8, no, 9, 9, no, middle, sound, solid, 4, number, sound, C, number, sound, number, 11, no, D, no, 11, no, 11.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
No, it's totally learned it. It's got in the rhythm now. Look at it. It's like, fuck, this is easy.
Alright, so I was on page 12, right? Let's see, what do we have here? This strikes at the heart of the teachings of the national curriculum because the material is deployed so that nobody is able to test astronomical claims when it comes to reliability. NASA basically have so much financial support and so many resources to make anything they want. Oh, shut the fuck up, Riley. First of all, you're European. Once again, you need to pump the brakes. First of all, no, NASA does not have some kind of mythical blank check. 0.49% of the federal budget, dude. Less than half of a percent. Yes, $20 billion sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? But let's do some basic math here. Sorry, Riley, I know this is hard. NASA had, in 2018, approximately 17,373 employees. The average NASA employee's salary, and this is a vague number, there are many levels to the agency's pay grades, is roughly $91,000. That's $1,580,943,000 already gone just to pay people. Next, let's note how many buildings NASA owns and has to pay running costs for. Plum Brook Station, Glenn Research Center, Software Independent Verification and Validation Facility, Goddard Institute for Space Studies, Wallops Flight Facility, NASA Headquarters, Langley Research Center, Marshall Space Flight Center, Kennedy Space Center, NASA Shared Services Center, Stennis Space Center, McCown Assembly Facility, Johnson Space Center, White Sands Test Facility, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and the Ames Research Center. These buildings are not cheap to run. $8.5 billion not cheap, to be specific. Wow, almost half the budget is gone just with running costs. Just to keep the lights on. You suppose it's cheap to keep the ISS continually flinging itself at the ground and missing? I am so sick of the NASA budget argument. Get over it, Flurfs. Go complain about the military. If you really cared about how your tax dollars are being spent, you'd give a shit about how much of it is being spent used to maintain obsolete tanks that sit in abandoned parking lots. By the way, guess where I got all that financial information? From NASA. They're a government agency. Therefore, by law, 100% of their work is transparent and open for the public to view, completely destroying the claim that their work cannot be corroborated. Alright, moving on. Oh, this is juicy. He words it horribly, but he basically states he reached out to Jojo Bank to verify their ping data. Yes, I know I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry, somebody correct me. When he told them he was a flat earther, or in his words, when it was revealed what was trying to be verified, they allegedly stopped talking to him. Funny how Riley has no evidence for that except for his word, because I don't believe him as far as I could throw him. Next, admitting that he's going on a tangent, again a tangent in his law thesis, Riley starts to attack gravity. He claims there is no scientific way to prove gravity because of how Einstein's relativity defines what gravity is. He also claims that the Cavendish experiment was superseded by general relativity. No, it was not. Riley, for the last time, science is a self-correcting prophecy. There is no competition to see who can debunk who. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and we improve upon knowledge that is imparted to us. The theory of general relativity simply means that the force of gravity, the force of mass attracting mass, is caused by that mass warping spacetime around it. It combines Cavendish with relativity. It doesn't replace Cavendish. Next.
We got you.
Now, we're on page 13, by the way. Riley goes after the big three of popular science, even though one of them has been dead for years. Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Brian Cox are most definitely exalted protagonists. The whole of science is generally exalted, but the main protagonists are elevated into superficial stardom. You're still using protagonist wrong, Riley. But you're also just describing a celebrity. That's all these people are. They're the celebrities of the scientific world. They are educated people who also happen to be charismatic in front of a camera, making them a useful mechanism for delivering information to those less informed. He then goes on to explain that, in contrast, people who believe in woo, creationists, flurfs, electric universers, etc., are demonized and ridiculed. He's right, they are, because those beliefs are all stupid and easily disproven. It's a natural consequence of being wrong all the time, especially when you say things like this. The counter-argument would be ridicule is not demonization in this context, but if you have ever engaged in the debate of creationism versus evolution and argue against evolution on the basis that there is no evidence to prove that a donkey fish evolved into a bison at some point, you will quickly be demonized for challenging evolution on the grounds of evidence. Of course you will be demonized for that, because that's a ridiculous thing to say. No part of evolution is suggesting that a donkey fish evolved into a bison. Literally nobody thinks that. On page 15, Riley cites something about the education system that essentially says you can't teach people something that forces them to accept a particular view and course of action as right as opposed to wrong. However, it's clearly referring to morality and ethics, which has some degree of obvious flexibility. However, when he says you will not pass your exams if you don't cite that the sun is 93 million miles away, he's completely wrong. You will not pass your exams if you don't cite that the sun is 93 million miles away without providing evidence to even come close to suggesting that it is not. There is zero evidence of a local sun. If you think there is, provide some. We've been waiting for years. Riley continues to claim that the education system allows for no other teachings except a heliocentric model, which is true because there is no other worthwhile model to teach except the heliocentric model. What exactly would you like us to do, Riley? I can imagine it now. Okay kids, here's the deal. The Earth is a spinning space ball. Or, some people think, it might be a giant snow globe. Except there might not be a dome. And there might not be an ice wall at the edges. And the snow globe may or may not be moving upwards at 9.8 meters per second squared through an unknown medium. And there may or may not be water above the dome that may or may not exist. Oh, and tides are caused by a deep of water under the Earth. Or maybe they're not. Oh, and the moon is a light. Or a hologram. Or a disk embedded in molten glass. Or something. You have no model to be taught, Riley. You have a loose group of idiots who film spirit levels across their garage and yell about the man keeping them down. You are giving yourself and your cult way too much credit. By the end of page 17, Riley is whining about creationists. He claims that creation teachings do not get a place in science and is taught instead in the context of religious education. This is true, because science doesn't use magic skymen to explain natural phenomena. Creation teachings are not taught scientifically because they are, by their nature, not scientific. He then cites two of the most horrific studies ever done in order to prove his point. Throughout the 20th century, 3 experiments were done that redefined how experiments are done today. The monster experiment, in which children were traumatized and berated until they developed a stutter. The Milgram experiment, in which patients were forced to believe that they were badly harming and possibly killing innocent people. And the Stanford Prison experiment, in which patients were assigned the roles of prisoners and guards who then went off the rails and formed their own Lord of the Flies. Riley cites the Stanford experiment with the premise that if you wear a white coat, you will assume an authority role. This is false and is not what the experiment proved. In fact, it's not even technically an experiment because there was no control group. It's also been mentioned that some of the guards were judged to have exhibited, quote, genuine sadistic tendencies, indicating the patients were picked pretty poorly. Riley states the experiment was halted due to how adaptive the subjects became to their respective roles. This is also false. It was halted because unprecedented results were being observed and serious permanent harm was foreseen. The experiment's halt was an ethical decision, nothing more. He then states the same thing of the Milgram experiment, by stating that patients would go through with their task of, quote, electrocuting people, though these people were never actually harmed, to the point of believing that they had killed their victim. However, Riley ignores that Milgram has been criticized for manipulating the results, with evidence showing that only half of the people who undertook the experiment believed it was real, and of those, 66% disobeyed the experimenter. In this context, it is clearly the case that Copernican teachings are taught as science, with a perceived authoritarian stance, and because the only opposing view, creation, that is taught is only done so in religious education, and no other opposing views are taught in science as the opposing view. No, Riley. Your evidence for that is two of the most notoriously badly performed and unethical experiments in the history of experiments. You know, I'm only on page 18, but I've got to stop again. I'm in the middle of this sea of stupid, and it's deep here, so it's going to take a while to cross it. I'll get there, though. I promise. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe to my channel, which is Dead Kennedy in Space. If you want to support me further, consider donating on Patreon or purchasing some of my work through Amazon or Teespring. Thank you, and I'll see you over the curve, Space Cowboys.
Live there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam, in a vast cosmic arena.